Jeremy mentioned, we're going to start with these issues, and then we're going to go off to the broader Q&A. So thank you all again so much. And it's also so great to have so many levels of elected officials here. Thank you, Zohran. Thank you, Tiffany, for coming, because a lot of times when we ask questions in any policy space, there are solutions at the city, state, and federal level. And a lot of times we have to coordinate that response in order to really fully serve the community. And so it's great when we have all of us in the same room, because there may be a situation where we have a question of our city council person, and it may be like, you know, I agree with you, but actually the jurisdiction for this is Congress, or the other way around. We may share something in a certain policy space, but actually the real decision maker is on the city level. So, so all of that is to say, we'll go back and I'll start with Vanessa Jones-Hall. She has to out, but her question and her topic on Astoria houses and what's happening there, particularly the intersection of construction and environmental injustice, which is something that we've worked very heavily on. Ms. Jones-Hall is the new TA president at Astoria houses. And this was one of the big factors that we have rolled out in developing the Green New Deal for public housing. We actually wrote the Green New Deal for public housing with NYCHA residents and NYCHA organizers to specifically address not just the shifts that we need in terms of an energy source. What we saw and what we see every winter is critical energy failures in our public housing stock. And a lot of those critical failures are because our housing stock has such antiquated oil, gas-based systems or steam systems that aren't adequately updated and kept up to date. So what the Green New Deal for public housing does is that it is really a laid out infrastructure plan that uses something in our existing code known as Section 3 to not only construct and not only construct, retrofit, but also convert our public housing to renewable energy resources. Everything from installing solar panels to making sure that we are routing renewables from Con Ed, which we want to make sure, thanks to Zohran's work, remains low. The price remains low. But also, not only that we're doing that work and we're making that investment, but that we're actually creating jobs for public housing residents and local residents to do so. And that's what Section 3 is about. So Section 3 actually provides preferential contracting for these retrofits to public housing residents and making sure that we're actually actively creating jobs that are local and union as well to make sure that we're creating those jobs that they're local when we're developing that work. But it's very important for us to also address issues like environmental racism, which is rampant, particularly in areas like NYCHA projects and just Black and brown communities in general. I also happen to represent East Elmhurst, which is a historically Black community that settled, frankly, after the Great Migration. And one of the things that we see is that there can oftentimes be enormous amounts of cancer or just general infrastructure failures that are concentrated in historically neglected communities and historically redlined communities. So in addition to that, and in addition to reintroducing that, we also work very hard in making sure that we are, I mean, this is getting a little bit into the housing piece, but I've also introduced legislation and passed an amendment that has passed the House so far to repeal something known as the Fair Cloth Amendment. A lot of people don't know that it has been illegal to construct new public housing in the United States for almost 30 years. And so we have not been able, this is something that actually happened during the Clinton administration. The Fair Cloth Amendment has restricted the addition of new public housing stock in the United States, which has helped contribute in part to our current housing crisis. We need to be constructing public housing. We need to be investing, renewing, restoring public housing. Those jobs need to go up. And so one of the first things that I did involved, in order to trigger those other aspects of the Green New Deal for public housing, is to repeal the Fair Cloth Amendment. And we had worked and for a while it was dead in the water, no one wanted to move it, and then we were finally able to pass it in the House. We actually were able to get repeal of Fair Cloth and Build Back Better in addition to $40 billion for NYCHA, but we know what happens in our mansion there. However, keeping our fingers crossed, we will see what happens with the Senate and the House in the elections next month. And if we're able to expand our margins there, then we'll be able to really pursue a secondary push and see if we can get that done. Let me bring up Costas's point on federal dollars for teens. This is really fascinating. I know that there has been an enormous amount of investment in education, but I hadn't realized that age breakdown. And seeing that there's been that restriction in funding for teens is something that I know we can definitely look into and expand, because as you mentioned, we're working together to get congressional earmarks in. Last year, we were able to approve 10 community project funds, which helped, and you're gonna all start seeing you all are gonna start seeing the results from that soon. We just had a groundbreaking at Elmhurst Hospital. We are constructing a new reproductive women's wing and just reproductive care wing that helps people from prepubescent all the way to more senior care in everything reproductive justice and everything from gender affirming care for our LGBT brothers and sisters and siblings. And non-binary people, and a lot more. And so we were able to secure $3 million from the federal government, which was then matched by our city and state partners, which added up to around $16 million to construct a new wing at Elmhurst Hospital, which, by the way, is a public hospital, which treats all people regardless of insurance or documentation status, which is so important. And that brings us to Jonathan's point here. When it comes to small businesses, we spoke not too long ago, but one of the things when it comes to, well, first of all, your point is absolutely correct on expanding a lot of these programs, because the thing that gets me is that with PPP and like a lot of these other programs, it doesn't directly address the rent backstop that happened during COVID. You know, there are people that owe, both residential and with certain small businesses, owe months and months and months of rent back pay. And a lot of these programs, whether it's the moratorium, when the moratorium ends up, then you have your landlord saying, okay, now I need 10 months of rent all in one payment, or other sorts of issues. And so one of the things that I had mentioned before was that when we saw at the beginning of PPP and EIDL and all this stuff, a lot of that money going to Outback Steakhouse and like these huge corporate people and entities and corporate entities taking in and breaking in so much from PPP. One of the reasons they were able to do that, not just because of access to capital and preferential relationships to banks, but a lot of it was because they had advanced information. The moment the bill passed, their lobbyists were able to quickly transmit that access to information to these kind of lobby groups and their contributing members. And that basically created an information gap where those big groups could move quickly, and then small businesses had to struggle for access to information. So one of the things that we did back during that time was that the moment that the bill passed, I hosted a PPP information session for small businesses, like within a day or two, so that some of our small businesses in our former district had access to that information almost as soon as these, more elite institutions did, which allowed us to get some folks in the door early, but not nearly enough. When we authorized the PPP program, we then we worked and we organized to make sure that we kind of had a little bit of a progressive stack, if you will, where that money would go to women, minority-owned and small and working class businesses first. And so Chase, Bank of America, et cetera, had a directive that they could not do that again. And which is why you saw during that second round of PPP, less of those stories happening. But I agree that we still need to expand a lot of these things. And I actually was just part of conducting a hearing in the House Financial Services Committee. This is also a PSA, because we had the CEOs of all the major banks, Jamie Dimon with Chase, we have Wells Fargo, Bank of America, other folks. They were not very happy with me. And but one of the things that we had brought up was that some of these banks developed their own proprietary PPP portal. Now, if you applied for PPP, you could apply directly with the Small Business Administration. The SBA had a website just like with the IDL. If you bank with some of these big banks, they almost developed their own portal. And what we're seeing with some of these banks is that they are telling people that they qualify for a lower amount of forgiveness than they actually qualify for. And then what they're doing is that they're saying, you owe us the difference. So as a PSA, and this is also potentially something to share with Queens Together members, is that if you know someone that is in that situation and they absolutely qualified for PPP forgiveness, but they bank with a major bank and their bank is telling them no, let us know. Because we can start taking action to take care of that. We started hearing some of this, we started hearing some reporting about it, but I think oftentimes what happens is that, especially in financial matters, there's so much shame involved, and people feel like they did something wrong, and so they don't go out they don't seek help, which can make the situation worse. And so if you're ever in that kind of a situation, please let us know. Don't feel embarrassed, don't feel anything. We serve absolutely everybody with the fullest amount of discretion and protection in our office. It doesn't matter if you're undocumented, it doesn't matter if you're unhoused, it doesn't matter how much money you make. We treat everybody the same, and even in the event where, due to any legal matter, we may not be able to help, we will always, always, always keep and protect your confidence. So just as a PSA there for that. Yeah, and I think we'll start off there, and then Jeremy, if you want to have us dive into the Q&A.
Thank you so much again for our so now we're going to the Q&A section. So again, to reiterate the process here, we're going to call someone's name. If you have submitted a question, we'll ask you to come to the front. We'll hold the microphone for you so you can ask your question. If you forgot your question, we have them written down. However, due to the large amounts of questions that we received surrounding the Innovation Queens development, we're going to start with this. Raise your hand if you submitted a question about Innovation Queens. Thank you. Yes. We know this is an issue of huge importance to the community, and so I'm going to pass it back over to the Congresswoman to talk about that, as well as to share a little bit about our housing approach.
Thank you so much. Okay, so as you, we got a lot of questions about this, as Jeremy said. So I'm going to start off with our overall housing approach, just what we believe fundamentally when it comes to housing, and then I'll move on to the actual Innovation Queen situation so that you all can see. So you all know that so that there's consistency here, but that this is what shapes our approach all over the district in all sorts of scenarios. So I was joking with Randy. Randy, can you raise your hand? Okay, so Randy is one of our policy leads on the campaign. And we've actually been working for a really long time on a social housing platform that we're hoping to drop soon. And we were joking because when it comes to housing debates, people throw out terms like NIMBY and YIMBY and all of these things, and we say we're SHIMBYs. And SHIMBY means social housing in our backyard. And that is what we support, we're SHIMBYs. So what does that mean? Social housing is housing that operates independent of our for-profit market. And it can take multiple forms. But the predominant governing principle of social housing is that housing is for living in, and that we prioritize forms of housing for use above forms of housing for profit. And so that can encapsulate several different forms, and we have them in our district. It can start with full, high quality, which has existed, public housing, but it can also include nonprofit housing. It can include cooperative housing, which we have in Co-op City, which is the largest housing cooperative in the world, is in our congressional district. And the way a co-op works is that you buy your apartment into your co-op, and then when you sell it for the same amount that you bought it for, plus inflation. And so it is not speculative. It's not designed for you to make money off of, but it's designed for you to live in a dignified fashion in. So we have nonprofit housing, we have cooperative housing, we have public housing, then you also have affordable housing, which depending on the nonprofit stock that is in, can come in many different forms. But so we are shimmies. We support social housing, and we are not under under the illusion that tons of market rate housing is going to solve our crisis. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that. As it pertains to this individual project, we know that there was a city council hearing earlier today. It may still even be going on. I was talking to somebody that was, okay, stop, okay. I was talking to someone an hour ago and he had his headphones on, like waiting for it. And so, I think, so let me take a step back on the specifics of this case in case not everyone is clued in. There is a proposed project for 2,000 units, 1,000 units? 2,000? 2,800 units, known as Innovation Queens. And when the proposal first came out, they were proposing, I think, as you said, 2,800 units at 25% affordability. So 75% of it would be market rate. We were a no on that from the jump because 25%, the borough president was a no on it, no. So now there's this new round where the developer has come back and is asking or offering, I think, a higher affordability rate. So now, in terms of where these things get approved and what level it is, to be clear, this is a city level issue. So this is a city council level issue in terms of approving the project, whether it proceeds or not, but not Tiffany's. This is not Tiffany's district. This is Councilwoman Wan's district. So she is currently and has been in the process of negotiating, I believe, with the developer in trying to secure a higher rate. I believe the developer has come in and offered 40% affordable housing. Please correct me if I'm getting the numbers off. 30% of which would be deeply affordable. The other 70% would be up for negotiation in terms of whether that's 40% area median income, 80, 100, etc. So, this is an issue that we're very closely monitoring. There was a hearing today. I think that there are certain aspects of the project that are concerning, and we need to, make sure that we follow closely the hearings, follow closely the process, the negotiations, the votes, and I'm talking about the press conference that happened earlier today. Because there are several grassroots organizations that have come together. Woodside on the Move,
Astoria Not for Sale,
Astoria Not for Sale, Justice for All, Western Community Land Trust, CAAB, and so there we go. Y'all are here. And so we take a lot of our lead very closely from grassroots organizations and communities that are here. And I understand that even in these coalitions, people have different stances. Some people are just absolutely no on this project, no matter what. Oh, by the way, the project is in neighboring Media Velazquez's district. But it's very close to our district, so it affects our neighborhood. So we're very closely following what's going on here. Some people are just an outright no. Some folks are saying if we raise the affordability rates, we want to be able to negotiate that and negotiate the AMI distribution. This is something that, of course, we are very closely monitoring. I believe the councilwoman is currently requesting for 55% affordable. And so I mean, I think in terms of how those negotiations proceed, that is something that we take the community's lead on that. But again, this is something that, in terms of our overall housing approach, what we want to focus a lot of our efforts on, and what we have focused a lot of our efforts on, is that this past year, or the past 2 years, we've actually helped open 2 social housing projects in our district. One is by Elmore in Eastern Queens. Elmore in East Elmhurst, and that is a senior, and let me see, the Elmore one is actually social housing that focuses on people in recovery, and to really help people who are transitioning in recovery services as well as seniors, because one of the big problems that we're having is that we're having developers or someone buy out a building that has seniors inside, 70, 80 years old, and evicting people who have lived here 40, 50 years, that are 70, 80 years old. And it's horrifying to see this happen. And so we support, and so we've opened up a social and an addiction recovery social housing project. We have the Just Homes initiative out in the Bronx, which is supporting people who are transitioning out of incarceration, because one of the big contributing driving factors sometimes of something known as recidivism is that when you leave after serving your debt to society, there's nothing there. And how are you going to pay your rent if you just got out of jail yesterday? And how are you going, and so the Just Home is a social housing project that helps take people who have rehabilitated and are transitioning back to society. But one of the things that we also really want to focus on is that, and that we're working very closely in trying to figure out, that we want to reconvene as well, is something that's very exciting, is the idea of community land trusts. So if you aren't familiar with community land trusts, this is I'm so excited about this. Community land trust means this. The home, you may be able to live and own the home, but in order to keep land values low, the land is publicly owned. Copenhagen has this model. And what that means for the community land trust is that when it's time for a person to sell their home, kind of like with a co-op, you want to buy into this opportunity to be housed. You're not looking to speculate, you're not looking to do any of that. You are able to use that piece as an opportunity to use that space to be utilized. And then when you're done, you can sell the home, but the actual land value remains low, so that we can keep housing affordable, which is something that we're very excited about. One example of this is that, is anyone familiar by any chance with Chaya CDC? They are an organization out in Jackson Heights that we work with. They work a lot with housing for our South Asian immigrant neighbors here. And one of the things that we do is that we help secure a $2 million grant, because Chaya was going to get gentrified out of the district. This is an anti-gentrification organization that themselves is about to get gentrified out and priced out of the community. So what we did was that, because their landlord was raising their rent so high that they couldn't stay in, so we secured a $2 million community project fund to buy a headquarters, help Chaya CDC buy their own headquarters, but are seeking to land trust the land. So whenever Chaya feels like they're going to transition out, and whenever Chaya feels like we need a bigger space, we're going to go somewhere else, they can leave that home, they can recoup their investment on their home, but the land is democratically governed. It belongs to the community. So instead of whenever they leave and you have the situation of these private speculators and developers, knocking on people's homes. We deal a lot with this in Puerto Rico too. Like, these developers come in and they try to buy people's homes, especially the elderly or someone just passed away. They try to scoop it up. But what this does, it means that it actually limits that land to be used for housing and to keep it affordable. And so it's really like the land prices and the speculation around land that gets so expensive that can also drive up the cost of housing. So that's something that, I think that's kind of overall where we're at. I'm trying to think if there are other pieces of work. We've done a lot of work in the housing space. I introduced legislation known as the Just Society suite of bills, which includes checks on, for example, if there's a landlord that is on record as violating laws, violating tenants' rights, we have proposed legislation that their access to federally backed mortgages and loans should be restricted. Period. Situations where you have someone who's not giving somebody access to clean water or heat in the wintertime. Very core, basic protections that continually violate people's rights and also continue to be eligible for federal and publicly subsidized loans. And so being able to dive into that space, keep folks accountable, and find creative ways of doing that through financing and access to that financing is going to be really important because, this is, as we know, this is the foundation of most wealth transfer in the United States. And we saw that especially so in the 2008 recession. And with the Fed chair hiking up interest rates the way that he is, which we've been critical of, I'm very concerned about working people getting underwater in a potential recession, that he is, that these interest rates are not doing much to solve. Thank you.
All right, so are we looking for time? We're doing great for time, y'all. So we're gonna start taking a few more questions here. So I'm gonna call the person's name. If you're here, please come to the front, and then I think Marvin will hold the microphone for you as well. So our first question is from Paige Rushing. Paige, are you here? Paige Rushing? No? Okay. Next question is from Daniel Bennett. Daniel, are you here? Okay. We have, I hope I'm saying your name right, Uta Pape?
Yeah, that's me.
Yes, oh great, come on up, thank you. Just come to Marvin right here, we'll hold the microphone for you.
Hi, it kind of ties in with and trust. So, as I understand educational systems here in the
Sorry, I
US,
can't hear you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Better? Okay. As I understand educational systems here in the US, the funding, especially for public schools, is based on property taxes. So I think my question was, what, if anything, Congress can do to change the system so the money goes to where the students are and not where the parents are?
So the vast majority of school funding dollars happen at the state and local levels. And that is where the whole property tax system comes into play. Because it's actually, the state assesses that, it's the state that charges and collects the property tax and then administers it accordingly. I am not in favor of a property tax system, and especially a local property tax system being used. I think it accelerates a whole lot of things. It accelerates almost a self-segregation of communities. You hear families and they're always saying, I want to go to a place with good schools. And what that means is I want to live around other people who are wealthier than me. I want to live in a place that's around as many other people wealthier than me that I can still afford to maybe live racially segregated school systems in the United States. In the United States. And I think, it's in no small part due to, part of that property tax system, but there's a lot more on top of it. Nicole Hannah-Jones has done a lot of work in racism in terms of school rezoning and things like that. And I definitely encourage reading into that. So I do not support just a flat property tax system because it creates not just school segregation, it creates overall segregation. And not only that, but we know socioeconomically, the communities that have the greatest amount of socioeconomic mobility are communities where rich and poor share geographic space. And it is not just beneficial to lower income people, it's beneficial to everybody to live in a society that is diverse. And our public schools are a part of that. And so, I am very supportive of that. I'm also supportive of, there was a ruling at the state level where many of these public schools sued the state of New York, saying that children's state constitutional rights have been violated due to the underfunding of certain communities. The state was found guilty of that, and actually, New York State and overall owes these schools over $1 billion. And so we are supportive of the suit. We're supportive of any efforts to ensure that the state accelerates that. And then on top of that, we work on the federal level to explore any of the small nook and crannies, whether it's title funding, et cetera, and figuring out how we can get more of those resources to our local schools. But a lot of the ways that they do that is through indirect incentives for state funding. So we've always been very supportive in working with our school advocacy organizations to identify those needs and figure out what, if anything, we can add to help create more progress in that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next question is Christina Iglesias. Christina, are you here? Christina, okay. Next question is Cody Resnick. No, shut up if you ask a question. Okay. Maybe. Yeah. Okay, great. So then we have a few more questions here. Okay, so our next question then is going to be from Sefa or Jen. Sefa, are you here? Okay. How about Joseph Doherty? Clint Okanyama. Yeah, all right, come on over here, Deborah, over there, please.
Hi. First, it's an honor to be talking. I've been trying really hard to create deeply affordable elder LGBTQ housing. I've spent about a year and a half on it. I'm committed to complete financial transparency, and I don't mean to profit whatsoever from this. And so I guess I've been researching real mediation. I've been talking to everybody that I possibly can, reaching out as much as I can. But this is my first time in the political sphere, I guess, so it's kind of crazy. And so I guess I just would love to know, if you have any suggestions, and I'll follow, any guidance that you have that you think is best. And I'd be interested in maybe trying to create a community action group so that we could find good locations for-profit developers, CLT, a pilot program, tax increment financing, however you want to do it. I'm up for it. So just follow your advice.
No, thank you. I think this is great. And a lot of times, sometimes when people ask me, how do I get into politics? I don't know where to start. And they think that the first or the only way is to either run for elected office get something done. And then in that process of trying to get something done, I was just at Community Board 2 last week, and someone came to me and said, you know, I have a young daughter, this is her first year in school. I thought every single school had a crossing guard and a crosswalk. And I was so shocked to find out that my daughter's school doesn't have one. And it's like next to a dangerous, really busy throughway where cars speed and things like that. And so she's like, I'm here at my community work and I'm trying to figure out how do I get a crossing guard for my school. And the process of doing that will teach you so much and really help you navigate so much, especially when it comes to the social housing space. Because our city, one of the things that we really need to work on, that we want to support folks in working on, is that, and that we've been discussing, is that there is so much red tape and there is so much, all these hurdles and obstacles to social housing, to housing cooperatives, to establishing nonprofit housing. But if you want to establish for-profit housing, it's like a lot of that there's still red tape, but a lot of that red tape can be cut. But I do think that we have a promising lead for you. We're just in a meeting with HANAC, which is one of the Hellenic community organizations, and they actually just opened social housing for, I know it's LGBT social housing. I don't know if it's LGBT for seniors, it might be, but they just worked on a project opening that in White Plains. And so I would definitely recommend reaching out to HANAC and asking them about that and seeing what steps we can start taking here locally. A lot of the ways that these things can start is that, you know, we need to construct a lot of housing, not even, before even talking about adding to the stock, we have a lot of stock that is dying right now. I mean, who here lives in a building where the heat don't work, the water don't work, the paint is chipping, you know. And
oh my God, you're fucking rambling here.
It's like the bone.
What the hell is this? Is everybody clapping for this? You following this?
You can have a house, but you're not gay. You have to live on the street. Is that how it goes?
You're just talking nonsense. You're not answering questions.
So if I don't have butt sex, I can't have a place to live. But if I do, I'm good. Is that how it goes? Well, that's what you're saying, right?
This is not making any sense.
That's what she's saying. She's saying it's housing for LGBTQ. I know, but I'm just
And sir, your sexual
But my
orientation.
question
We've been sitting here for an hour and she's not answering anything. She's just talking crap. What is she answering?
unfair. That's like
Making sense? She's not making sense. She's talking crap. Yeah. Where's the crime? Can you talk about crime? You might get shot. Oh, the rats.
She's going to say, she's going to explain why. The wild crime that's going on.
There you go. There you go.
The woman that was stabbed 20 times, that was a 9/11
Thank you.
FDNY worker. This is insanity.
Yes.
That's what we want
The
to
boy
know.
that was stabbed, the black boy that was stabbed on the train platform in Rockaway. The black boy that was stabbed.
Tell him.
Every single day.
People don't want to believe
The
from the
steel
net.
worker that was stabbed, killed. There's 9 killings on the train. This is all wonderful. Really. Affordable housing. That's all wonderful.
Talking bullshit.
I'm gonna give it to
Repeal
you.
bill of headlines.
People are leaving New York City if
This
you
is
don't
ridiculous.
bring crime
It's a joke.
under control. And I know you are all for defunding the police.
Yes.
Done it?
Yes, you
We
are.
said Bill de Blasio.
Ridiculous. You don't care
$1,000,000.
You don't care.
In fact, Maya Wiley, which was the most radical mayoral candidate in this election.
Talk to him, King. Talk to him.
Okay?
Let her speak. Let her speak.
The people
nice words and stuff.
Sit down. Sit down. Free speech, sit down. Sit down, free speech, sit the fuck down. Sit the fuck down. Sit down. Free speech.
Excuse me. On behalf of the facility, again, I need to remind everyone here, this is a boys and girls club, this is a student and family facility. If this will continue, I will ask you to step outside or you will be escorted out.
We're not leaving. She was talking shit. Double talk for an hour.
So I know you're here. We want to hear it, okay?
Double talk.
It's not up to you to decide what she said.
We did listen for an hour.
Not 2 hours, 6 to 8. It was a 6 to 8 listening session. 6 to 8.
then deal with it. You don't get the fuck out of
We cannot say that we are the community and act like this to each other. We cannot have it.
Give us some fucking trays, please. Why are you right in front of her? What are you hanging over like a vulture? Oh, this one too. This one too. Go sit down. Go sit down. Find a seat. Guys, sit down. Find a seat. Go find a fucking seat. What are you waiting for?
For 1 minute.
Fuck you, you shut up.
I want to ask more. Why do you think something
I'm for equal rights, not special rights for anybody.
I'm not here. Fuck that. I'm gonna let them talk to us like hell.
Why are you funding Ukraine war? Communist! Bullshitter! A paid bullshitter! So all you do is talk bullshit. Keep smiling, you fucking empty brain.
That's the victory within yourself. They don't understand. Anybody you see on this world right here, the world is dying out over there. That's the victory.
I think that
We're shit on push
still on script talking bullshit, and you guys are fucking clapping. She's still talking on script. Answer the real question. You're not fucking saying that. I'll let you smile, a fake smile.
How much was the human race worth to you?
Answer the real question! Answer the real question!
The real question is how the fuck are you okay with doing what you're doing?
Stop the clothes! Stop the
All the questions were answered so far, the question that had to be answered.
When we have anti-choice law enforcement officers who are sharing information with how can we, protect people seeking abortions when they are doing resources online, buying things online, or traveling interstate.
So mass surveillance is a huge issue. There's two main inputs when it comes to mass surveillance. It's the establishment of surveillance state, which is basically what we're talking about. You have surveillance that is conducted by...
You're still talking on script. Answer the real fucking question. Answer the real question. Well, oh, shut up.
So we have mass surveillance that's conducted by the federal government, and that involves really concerning aspects here. For example, during the Black Lives Matter protest, you actually
You didn't answer one question the whole night. Not one question did you answer. Mind your own business. Mind your own business. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to her. Mind your own business. 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 Okay. So address the state issue. So address the state issue. Address the state issue. You can talk to them and get the point out. You don't know what you're talking about. If I was smart enough, I could run fucking circles around the street smart and yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure, okay. You come and tell somebody they're not smart enough. You don't fucking know me. You don't know me. You don't know me. You're not smart enough.
That's the first part that you can tell she's not smart.
Yeah, she's not smart enough.
There's also the issue of private corporations that are contracted by the federal government. One of the things that I have gone after is companies like Amazon and Microsoft having massive contracts with
Amazon was losing their own cities 5,000 jobs. Why did you remove those jobs? You didn't get a handbag, was it?
In terms of our work,
Extra crispy.
I've actually done several, I've worked in several different ways on primarily through my solar
and Governor Hopkins gotta go as well. Hold down the
Our
line.
oversight has had a lot of jurisdiction over surveillance issues. So sometimes a lot of
You want to speak to them too? I'm going to work my way to Fox, but I would like you to help me. Shush! You shut the fuck up.
I'll get everybody out.
No, you won't. How you gonna touch me? Touch me. Touch me. See what happens. Touch me. See what happens. Touch me. See what happens. You're going fucking down. You're going down. Just to let you know, this officer told us he doesn't want to do anything. We need to let them speak. We need to let them speak. That's what he's telling us. Deanna, you want to speak to this side?
But I'll start with this example. A couple years ago, Delta, tried to roll out technology that would make you use your face-to-face skills.
Taking away people's property. Yes. That's what she's talking about. That's what she's talking about. Right back to our Lord. She's talking about taking away property. You know what she's at the World Economic Forum. That's what she's doing. She's on the very narrative of the World Economic Forum. They're going to take our property. Wake the hell up. You can't say stupid for all of us. You can't say stupid all your life. Stop being stupid. It's genocide.
Look what happened. Look what happened. I come from a family.
I know. Laid back, right?
I know. That's happened.
You want to stand in our face? We're going to put our sign in your face. Why don't you move?
I know it's cold. She's not 6 feet away.
Yeah, she's too close.
They keep standing in front of me. No, move them. Move them. Right behind me.
She's talking about election.
Go get SRG. Not the cops. Go get SRG.
Get SRG. This is bullshit.
No, go get SRG. If you want me to move, go get SRG. I know my rights, so go away. Go away.
All right, it's working. This is bullshit. This is communism. It's working. Yes, it is. No, sir. So, if I was, what if
You
I
have no
was?
clue what's going on. You wouldn't stand
It's
there.
legal
so
to drink,
passive.
sir.
None of
They
you
did have
would
one
be
drink
so
about 3
passive
hours
if you
ago.
understood what's
wine
going
cooler.
on. You would not be
Before you
passive
drink
if you
it.
knew what's going on in the world. Wake up and have the kids.
Am I all over the
They're
place?
not to harm your kids.
Drinking is legal. You know that?
They're not to harm your
What's
kids.
that look for?
Shut up.
You don't know that? Drinking is legal. I'm above here. This one's looking at you.
Officer! Officer! I want to charge against her. I want to charge against her.
She touched you?
Yes, she did.
What are you touching people for? Keep your hands off people. We're not touching anybody.
You like my type here?
We're not
I don't drink that way. I'm standing on. I'm standing on. What if she moves? She doesn't move, I'm standing beside her. I think she loves me.
You're a very attractive woman.
I am, I'm a lady.
You're up to a warrant. You don't allow this warrantless searches to go on, but then on top of that, your knowledge and consent, particularly in states where abortion rights are rolling back.
Can we clap now? Can we clap now?
Our protections here in New York
Fucking
State,
joke.
there are very, very dangerous laws. And I want to say,
You gotta make a point all night.
We were able to prevent facial
board and they're playing, because it's all documented.
Fucking ridiculous.
Any one of us can do this.
Unbelievable.
Freedom is a beautiful thing, and you smell it. I taste it, I can feel it all in my body. I look at not money, it's slave. It's slave to the system. You're out of place, you're out of place. No, this is for the kids. No, this is for the kids. We're here for the kids.
Thank you so much.
And I would argue that
Serving drinks after this.
We worked with a community organization in the Bronx where there was an enormous amount of spikes in violence. And so what we started to do was that we worked with a community organization and were able to get a grant for several $100,000. And we said, let us just take this small pilot group of people who are affected by crime and by violence, including people who are committing violence. Because what we saw is that post-COVID, there's an enormous amount of mental health crises, particularly among young people, and particularly, especially in incidents of violence among young men. Let's say teenage to 20, almost 30. And that's where the vast bulk of the social discourse is coming from. So with folks that we found that we worked with in Chicago Hospital, we said, why don't we just take a small portion of people involved in these incidents of violence, and just with a small pilot group, what if we move the response out of the precinct, right? If an incident of violence happens, if someone needs to get stitched up, they get stitched up, then they get taken to the precinct, and then from the precinct, they get charged, they get this, or that, and that. What if we just take a small pilot group, and we shifted response out of the precinct and into a hospital? And so what happened is that what we did in the Bronx is that anyone who got admitted from a gunshot wound, a stab wound, etc., immediately got flagged for the Stand Up to Violence program. And here's what we did. We brought in not just a doctor to stitch the person up. We brought in a social worker. We brought in mentors. We brought in housing specialists. And you know what we found? We brought in psychiatrists. We brought in psychologists. You know what we found?
My God, answer the question.
We reduced reoccurrence of crime.
No, you didn't do nothing.
Tell me I look like your phone.
I'm not crying. She just answered. Did you hear what she said? The last few minutes, she said they did a pilot program where they. I mean, I didn't hear anything that she said because you guys were screaming.
Yeah. What did everybody erupt about?
Huh?
Well, what was the victory?
There was a pilot program that she did, so I was just Googling what that program was, where they would change the way that they handle victims of like stabbing and gunshots in hospitals. So rather than like charging them and like flagging them for some kind of crime or something, they would treat them in a different way. Okay. And I didn't hear all the details, but she said it had an effect
Thank
of
you very
lowering
much.
crime. So it had an actual statistical effect.